Original Premier League stadiums. The very first Premier League season is over 30 years old now, and the stadiums involved in that very first season have changed a lot. So let's take a look back at the stadiums that featured in the first ever Premier League season in 1992-93. Arsenal, Highbury. Highbury had been the home of Arsenal Football Club since 1913, when it became the site of their first ever Premier League season. Known also as Arsenal Stadium, it was given the affectionate nickname of the home of football. It was built on the site of a local college's recreation ground and was significantly redeveloped twice. The first reconstruction came in the 1930s and the second in the early 1990s. During the season, Highbury was being developed, with the North Bank being removed. It meant that during Arsenal's first season in the Premier League, their capacity was just 29,739. The rebuild was finished in August 1993 with 38,419 capacity. In 2006, Arsenal moved to Emirates Stadium and Highbury was demolished. In its place, the housing development called Highbury Square was built, which resembles the old stadium in its layout and design. Aston Villa, Villa Park. Villa Park has been the home of Aston Villa since 1897. Aston Villa have never planned to move out of the stadium, instead undergoing plenty of refurbishments on the stadium. The stadium is iconic thanks to the history of Villa Park, as it has hosted a whopping 55 FA Cup semi-finals. It had a capacity of 39,399 during the season, in which Villa finished in second place. Today, the stadium is still in use by Aston Villa. There are plans of redevelopment and expanding the ground in the near future. Blackburn Rovers, Ewood Park. Ewood Park opened in April 1882. Blackburn Rovers was seen as one of the title favourites heading into the very first Premier League season. They had a new owner who was keen on spending big, both on players and the stadium. So Ewood Park was one of a number of Premier League stadiums that was undergoing development during the first season of the Premier League. At the time, the stadium held around 31,000 people. Today, Ewood Park is still the home of Blackburn Rovers. Chelsea, Stamford Bridge. Stamford Bridge was first built all the way back in 1877, and it became the home of Chelsea Football Club in 1905. The stadium was not renovated for a very long time, but had to conform to the Taylor Report that came in the wake of the Hillsborough disaster. At that time, Chelsea were averaging just 18,754 in attendance on average per game in the Premier League. Attendance would rise massively in the next few years, and Stamford Bridge is still the home of Chelsea FC today, with a capacity of 40,000. Coventry City, Highfield Road. Opened in 1899, Highfield Road was being transformed into an all-seater stadium during the very first season of the Premier League, so the capacity was down to around 20,000. Highfield Road lacked major facilities, and so it caused Coventry City to move to the Rioch Arena. The last game at Highfield Road was played in April 2005, and a year later the stadium was demolished. 5 years after Coventry were relegated from the Premier League. The site was used to provide housing where the car park and stand stood, while grass was relaid on the playing surface to allow the continuation of football on that space. Crystal Palace, Selhurst Park. Selhurst Park became the home of Crystal Palace in 1924. The stadium was designed by Archibald Leitch, who is famous for being involved in the design of other major stadiums. Selhurst Park has gone through plenty of changes, having been renovated 4 different times. The first season of Premier League football for Palace saw them with a stadium that had a capacity of around 26,000. Palace were relegated in the very first season of the Premier League. Today, Selhurst Park is still the home of Crystal Palace playing in the Premier League. Everton. Goodison Park. Goodison Park is one of the most historic football stadiums in the Football League. Designed by Archibald Leitch, Everton first became tenants there in 1892. The stadium is famous for hosting the 1966 World Cup semi-final between West Germany and the Soviet Union. The first Premier League season was also the first that Goodison Park became an all-seater. The stadium was undergoing major redevelopment works at the time that would see the capacity almost double in the following years. The attendance was only around 20,000 for most of the first season of the Premier League. Today, Goodison Park has a capacity of 39,000, but will only be the home of Everton for one more year, as Everton are moving into a brand new stadium for 2025. Ipswich Town. Portman Road. Ipswich Town were one of 3 promoted teams for the first Premier League season. They played their games at Portman Road. The stadium started out as a cricket ground before Ipswich Town became the tenants back in 1884. In their first Premier League season, Ipswich had a capacity of around 23,000. The stadium features a couple of stands named after legendary managers, with the North Stand now known as the Sir Bobby Robson Stand and the South Stand now known as the Sir Alf Ramsey Stand. Today, the stadium is still the home of Ipswich Town. Leeds United. Elland Road. Leeds United currently have the 13th biggest stadium in England, and Elland Road was certainly one of the biggest stadiums in the Premier League during the league's first season. Leeds have called Elland Road home since 1919, and the stadium has undergone several different renovations, including one in the early 1990s. A brand new East Stand was being built during the 92-93 season, but they were still able to have the highest attendance figure of 34,166 against Manchester United in February 1993. Leeds still play at Elland Road today, with a capacity of 37,000. This video is sponsored by Soccer Atos. Are you looking for high quality football jerseys to show your support for your favourite team? Then check out Soccer Atos, where you will find a wide selection of jerseys from teams all around the world. And when at checkout, use 10% discount code TFC. Liverpool. Anfield. Anfield opened in 1884 and was first the home of Everton until 1892, when Liverpool became permanent tenants and the Toffees moved to Goodison. The stadium is known for the Kop Stand, one of the most legendary football stands in the world. Liverpool fans filled it almost every match day of the first Premier League season, and still do today. A second tier was added to the Kemlyn Road stand in 1992, with 11,000 seats. Liverpool was still able to get an average league home attendance record of 34,741. Today, Anfield has a capacity of 60,000, after the last renovations in 2024. Manchester City. Main Road. Having originally played their games in Hyde Road, Manchester City moved to Main Road Stadium in 1923. At one point, the stadium had a capacity of more than 80,000, and it was used to host FA Cup semi-finals and England games. By the start of the Premier League, the ground's capacity was shrinking as it was moving to become an all-seater stadium. The capacity was around 35,000 for the first Premier League season. After 80 years at Main Road, Manchester City moved into the City of Manchester Stadium in 2003 and Main Road was demolished. A large housing development is now located at the site. Manchester United. Old Trafford. Old Trafford has been the home of Manchester United since 1910. The stadium is today the largest club football stadium in the UK, with a capacity of 74,000. A combination of the success of the club and the changes made to all UK stadiums meant Old Trafford underwent plenty of changes in the early 1990s. In that first Premier League season, the capacity at Old Trafford was reduced to an all-time low of around 44,000. Manchester United were crowned the very first Premier League champions. The stadium is still home of Manchester United today, despite the fact that the stadium has not seen as much redevelopment as United fans have been hoping for. Middlesbrough, Ayresome Park. Middlesbrough made it to the Football League at the start of the 20th century, and so had to move to a bigger stadium. They moved to Ayresome Park in 1903, but the stadium was never properly redeveloped, and it meant that by the time Middlesbrough were in the Premier League, they were looking for a new home. Ayresome Park had a capacity of around 26,000 in the final few seasons that the stadium was open. It was closed just 3 years after the start of the Premier League, as Middlesbrough moved to the Riverside Stadium. The stadium was demolished 2 years later in 1997, making way for a housing development. The old gates of Ayresome Park were preserved and still stand in front of the Riverside Stadium. Norwich City, Carrow Road. Norwich City had a brilliant first Premier League season, having been leading the title race for most of the season, but subsequently finishing third. They did it with the same stadium that Norwich moved into in 1935. The name comes from the road that encloses the ground on 3 different sides. They had one of the smallest stadiums in the Premier League. Carrow Road had a capacity of just over 20,000. The stadium is still the home of Norwich City today, with it currently having a capacity of 27,244. Nottingham Forest, City Ground. The City Ground was one of the biggest and most prestigious football stadiums in the country during the first Premier League season. Nottingham Forest moved to the City Ground in 1898. The City Ground was able to hold around 26,750 people at full capacity during the first season of the Premier League. Forest fans had to watch as their iconic stadium became a second-tier stadium as they were relegated by finishing bottom of the Premier League. The City Ground is still Forest's ground today with a capacity of 30,000. Oldham Athletic, Boundary Park. Oldham Athletic took over as owners of Boundary Park in 1904, with the previous team Oldham County FC having folded 5 years prior. The stadium is located in the middle of Oldham and was originally known as the Athletic Ground. Boundary Park was the smallest stadium during the first Premier League season with a capacity of around 17,000. Despite the fact that Oldham are now playing in the National League, they are still at Boundary Park. Boundary Park is the first former Premier League stadium to host non-league football. Queen's Park Rangers, Loftus Road. Loftus Road opened in 1904 and was first used by Shepherd's Bush Football Club. It wasn't until 1917 that QPR moved in. In 1981, it became the first stadium in British football to have an artificial pitch of OmniTurf installed. The capacity of the stadium during the first Premier League season was 27,000, with the most fans seen in that first year being just over 21,000 against Liverpool. Loftus Road is still the home of Queen's Park Rangers today, with the capacity having dropped to 18,439, in part due to becoming an all-seater stadium. Sheffield United, Bramall Lane. Bramall Lane was originally built as a cricket ground. It first opened in 1855 and has been the home of Sheffield United since 1889. It had a capacity of 32,000 during the 1992-93 season. Their highest attendance was in November, with over 30,000 fans watching the Sheffield Derby. Bramall Lane is still the home of Sheffield United today. Sheffield Wednesday, Hillsborough Stadium. The start of the Premier League came just a few years after Sheffield Wednesday Stadium was the site of the worst tragedy in English sporting history. Opened in 1899, Hillsborough still had a capacity of over 39,000 during the first Premier League season. Today, the stadium is still the home of Sheffield Wednesday. Southampton, the Dell. Southampton were originally tenants of Hampshire County Cricket Club, but built the Dell as a way to stop paying their expensive rent. They moved in the stadium in September of 1898. In 1950, the Dell became the first in England to install permanent floodlighting. The capacity of the Dell was just under 20,000 during that first season, with the Dell being the second smallest stadium in the league. By the mid-1990s, the club were looking for a new and bigger home. It was confirmed at the end of the 1998-99 season that Southampton would be moving to the new St Mary's Stadium. The Dell was demolished in 2001 and replaced by a housing estate. Tottenham Hotspur, White Hart Lane. Having originally played their home games on public land, Tottenham Hotspur moved to White Hart Pub and built their stadium on the site. White Hart Lane Stadium opened in 1899. It had a capacity of 36,230 during the first Premier League season. Despite the constant refurbishment of the stadium, Tottenham still chose to build a brand new stadium on the site of White Hart Lane. White Hart Lane was closed in May 2017 and demolished. The new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium opened in its same place in 2019. Wimbledon, Selhurst Park. Wimbledon played their home games at Selhurst Park during the first Premier League season, due to lacking their home ground. They shared the stadium with Crystal Palace for around 12 years. The stadium's capacity was 26,000. Selhurst Park is still a Premier League stadium and the home of Crystal Palace. Wimbledon was dissolved in 2004 due to relocation of Wimbledon FC to Milton Keynes. Which stadium was your favourite?